You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. I'm your host, Trent. This week, I am on location for the second time ever in 209 episodes down in sunny, beautiful Mandurah, one of my favourite parts of Western Australia these days. I've been reintroduced to it over the last couple of years through some summer holidays throughout Corona, and I'm so happy I did because I've got a passion for the area that has ignited in myself, and most people need to learn about this area again. Come back to beautiful Mandurah, check out the property here, and the one person that I think is most qualified to talk to us about how this market's going, how life is going in Mandurah is the director of the most successful real estate agency in Mandurah, and to be frank, probably Western Australia, Ben Hatch. How you going, mate?
I'm going very, very well, Trent. Great to be here, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
You drive down Pinjarra Road, you hit Harcourts Mandurah. You got quite a few hundred sales a year. Give us some of the numbers quickly.
Sales-wise, last year we cracked 1,000 sales for the first time, 1,061 sales for the year.
That's hard to fathom.
Oh, a huge year, which was fantastic. Great effort to the team, so we were very proud of that number.
You're nothing without your sales agents in your team, obviously. You run the show these days in terms of the office, but you've got some heavy hitters in terms of sales agents, right? Do you want to give them a bit of a shout out, those guys who are pushing the big numbers?
We actually got 6 of the top 10 representatives working from our office. Big hitters are everyone from, Alison Hobbs, Michael Goodwin, the Harrises, June Robertson, Claire Seamer. We've got everybody like that. Nicole Hindmarsh, they're our big hitters. But a lot of that is depends on volume and obviously value as well, doesn't it?
Now, how long have you run Harcourts here?
So we started Harcourts 12 years, going on 13 years ago, so 2010.
That's an interesting time to be starting a business in Mandurah. When we think about the history of the area on a property basis, that's been a pretty tough time in Mandurah for quite a long time before COVID, hasn't it?
Oh, 100%. So Harcourts Mandurah was our second business, and we seem to open businesses up when it was in the tough times, but that's a great way to start. But yeah, we've seen a lot of changes in Mandurah, and we've been very fortunate enough to experience different markets, which is great.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of Mandurah, but two types of histories, as we always do with a Suburb Spotlight. Firstly, more historically, what it was like when it first started as a destination to live in. We're talking decades and decades ago. And then also we'll segment it to what's really important to a lot of people, the last 10 to 15 years, because that's a story, that's a national story in itself that everyone would know about. Absolutely. Right back 100 and something years ago, why did Mandurah become a place? Was it simply just the estuary?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Mandurah was known as a fishing village. It started off with mullets. It was mullet fishing. There was prawns, cobbler as well. That was what it was known for. The estuary waterways were amazing.
And when was this?
This is 100 years ago, isn't it? I sold Sutton Farm, which was built in 1860. That was in Hall's Head, so I sold that 2 years ago. That was one of the original homesteads in Mandurah.
Big British population.
Absolutely. There was a big British population here, and Secret Harbour seemed to pull a lot of the UK up that way, but it's certainly coming back down here for sure.
My mum grew up here 40, 50 years ago. She went to Pinjarra Senior High School. It's funny to think that Pinjarra was the district centre back in the day, and Mandurah was still that sleepy holiday town. People used to come for a holiday. It's hard to fathom. It's like how people used to go to Yanchep for a holiday.
I hear you. And look, we did as kids. So before I grew up in Carnarvon, we used to come down every summer and stay in Mandurah with our friends, close friends. You definitely saw it back then. So if I go back to when I first moved to Mandurah back in 1989, there was 22,500 people here. So that number has now approached 90,000. It's nearly quadrupled in size in that period of time.
It's had a lot of redevelopment, especially around the quay. Do you want to talk to that in the last 20 years, how it's really come on?
I think Mandurah really started to turn a corner and be known when all the canals started to get built down here.
So your Hall's Head, your Port Bavard, Erskine.
Absolutely, yeah. So you started, there was Yunderup in
you can't forget Yunderup. Yeah.
No, not at all.
That was the first one, really, wasn't it?
That and the waterside canals in Dudley Park. So they were the first two to really get built. Mandurah really got on the map when Port Mandurah started getting built. So in stage 1 Port Mandurah, and there was a Cedar Woods property group where the developer actually got in here, got their teeth sunk into it, took over the development and made it happen.
I still can't fathom to this day the ballsiness to develop a canal. It's not something that people are used to doing here in Western Australia. There wouldn't be many professionals with a feasibility estimate on what it costs to build canals. But look, they went and did it, and it's changed the landscape of the area for the better. There's some fantastic, absolute mansion houses down here. And when you think about it, especially in Halls Head and Port Brevard, the peak really seemed to be in 2006. What happened?
Okay, if you really go back to those years, do you remember Bernard Salt? So Bernard Salt, he made a few profound statements about Mandurah. It's the next mini Gold Coast. It was.
We should be. Let's be frank. It really should have been.
Absolutely, yeah. I hear you. But what it did, like I was in a different industry prior to real estate, and I used to travel a lot. And it didn't matter where I went in the world back in the early 2000s. If I mentioned the word Mandurah, where are you from? I'm from Mandurah. Everybody knew where Mandurah was. So everyone started investing here. If you go back in the early 2000s, and again, don't quote me on this, but I believe the owner occupancy rate down here was sitting at about 32%. And so then investment properties and all the properties that were bought up until 2006-07, they were predominantly investment properties.
So quite inflated. And I remember you telling me off air that median price in Mandurah was more than the median in Perth. That's unfathomable.
That's how popular it got. Developers weren't releasing enough land at the time. There were so many people wanting to invest here. The marina was getting developed. And then all of a sudden we cracked $610,000, I believe, in median house price, and the rest of WA was at 600. Perth was at 600, I believe.
And was it the financial crisis that had it all come tumbling down?
It did. That was a pretty sad time. So 2008-09, we could see the writing on the wall. There were so many developers here. Mining was a little bit struggling at the time. So everyone got out of their investment properties, and that was the first to go. Boats and investment properties down this way, they came on the market in bundles. It was horrible.
I'm someone who will scout around RP Data, M&G Access, all the mapping services to have a look at who owns what and when they bought it and what they paid for it. And it does seem that the peak, especially around the uber wealthy properties in the area, was 2006. There were properties that were selling for $2.5-3 million that when they resold at any point in the last 10 years or the 10 years since, might have been for half of that price.
Definitely, yeah. Probably less than half. They more than halved. So we saw properties that were worth $3 million on sale at $1.3 million only 5 years later. Certainly some sad times when people got out of or needed to get out of Mandurah at that point.
Obviously what it's done is it's created a market that nationwide people have recognised has absolutely dumped, right? Probably worse than any place I've seen other than Karratha post-boom, Gladstone as well over in Queensland. People will recognise that from the East Coast. And you're sitting in a situation that for the period of really more than a decade, most of the property in this region is selling for below replacement cost.
100%. There's been such good opportunity down this way. We started to buy back in 2012, back into the market. So we could see it was going to recover at some point. It's been a long battle. But one thing I would like to say about Mandurah is if you really have a look at it and go back, so when I think I mentioned that number of 32% owner occupancy, so that was back in the early 2000s up until 2006. What we've found over the last sort of 12 plus years of selling in Mandurah, we've sold 95% of our properties have gone to owner occupiers. So all of a sudden we've found people relocating to Mandurah, making Mandurah home. They're happy to commute to Perth. They've got fly in, fly out jobs, or there's been a lot of jobs created down this way in the refineries and so forth. So we've seen a huge change in the demographic.
The foundation of ownership here, and that is a high correlation in property generally around Australia between high percentages of owner-occupier ownership.
Yes.
And downside strength. You look at a suburb, for example, like Duncraig, like Wembley Downs, these sort of areas people could understand and relate to in Perth. Extremely high percentages of owner-occupiers, and even in the worst times over the last 10 years in Perth, never really had much of a drop in value. The closer you can be to representing that demographic split in your area, you have much more safety on the downside when things inevitably turn from a macro perspective. They're not in that position, obviously, in Western Australia, where we're looking up and up and up from here. which is fantastic. But to just recognise that Mandurah has flipped from being an investor's paradise, a little bit like the Gold Coast, and has matured as a market, got to give you a bit more confidence.
Oh, definitely. And it's given our team a lot more confidence as well. But just the infrastructure that's gone into Mandurah with the shopping centres, the schools, there's a lot of good private schools down here. Mandurah Catholic College, so MCC, Frederick Irwin. There's a lot of tiers to those schools as well in other suburbs. You've got Foundation Christian College. There's so many good schools that are down here. But then you've got the good public schools as well. The Falcon Primary Schools, there's Dudley Parks, Meadow Springs, there's so many, and Lakelands Primary Schools. You've got so many public schools that people are happy to put their children into, which is great. It's definitely changed. It's changed for the better. Like I said before, it's such good value down here, and people are flocking down here for that reason.
Let's have a chat about who's buying off you at the moment. When I talk to number one agents of their areas like Jack Wormington, like Shane Beaumont, these sort of guys, they report to me quite often that more than half of their buyers are from the East Coast. They're investors obviously coming across. You're talking obviously about a high percentage of owner-occupiers in Mandurah these days. Do you have a strong contingent of East Coast buyers and East Coast buyers agents pushing into this area yet?
Definitely, yeah. We have for the last 8 to 12 months now. And they've been a little bit of ahead of the pack in my opinion.
In terms of price?
In terms of price and in terms of getting their clients into Mandurah. But what we've found there, it's probably a 70-30 split. So 70% are owner-occupiers, 30% is to the investor market. So we're seen as a place to live, which has been awesome. But yeah, definitely the Eastern States investors, the buyer managers and so forth that are coming across here, they've certainly assisted with the recovery of Mandurah and prices without fail.
Well, I think what it always has done, and that's not just in Mandurah but across the state, is it's a little bit of a foundational kick in the ass for the rest of West Australian investors and buyers to recognise that there is competition for property here. I think too often West Australian buyers rest on their laurels. They're too risk averse often as well, and they miss the boat for a long time, and eventually they realise, Jesus, people have been buying here for the last 8 or 10 months with a lot less risk aversion, and we're now 10% behind the game. We're going to have to put in a better offer here. Without the East Coast market, I think there'll be a lot less strength in terms of buying power right now.
Yeah, and I would 100% agree with that. So you notice go back to COVID when the borders were slammed shut. So yes, we were getting the sight unseen buyers popping into our area, but it's changed now. They are definitely coming over here to view, or they're FaceTiming, etc. But I found that when the buyer managers or these buyers agents were coming in with their Eastern States investors into WA or into the Peel region, they were coming in nice and strong, whereas all of our WA buyers were missing out because they were accustomed to coming in low on pricing. Then all of a sudden that has changed. So there are the WA buyers have now cotton on that to secure a property, we've got to actually put our best foot forward.
We've got to stump up.
Absolutely.
Who's selling?
Changed.
I'm assuming a lot of your sellers are burnt investors from a decade ago who are now getting to a point where they go, I can cop this loss, or I'm getting my money back now.
We saw a lot of them actually leave the market over the last 10 to 12 years. So yes, they are still there. But I think there's a lot of investors that have bought back in 2012, 2013 perhaps, even 2015. And maybe they're a little bit burnt or they're just wanting to transition out. But they've found it as a good time to transition in a timely manner out of the market for new people to come in. But we still see people that have bought in 2006 that they're not getting their money back at this point.
I remember looking 3-4 years ago in Mandurah at quarter acre R40 development blocks, and they were selling for less than $200,000 with a house on them. This was like a kilometre from the quay. You'd be back up to the 400s now, wouldn't you, for a lot of this stuff? Imagine buying 4 years ago. Perfect time.
Absolutely perfect time. Yeah, there's again a lot of changes as well. A lot of the R40s got rezoned to R60 and R100. So, and that, I think that put a bit of pressure back onto developers not wanting to spend the money and develop. So it probably pushed the prices down again. But they've definitely started to recover. They're back at that 350 to 400 range for sure.
Well, I mean, and we saw, I guess, similar, and this is probably not a similar demographic, but even in places like Balga and Kundula, right? And I consider Mandurah to be a more diverse and higher demographic in itself. Coolbellup as well in those price points. They went up to 500s back in the last boom, dropped down to low 300s, and now they're back up to 400s, 500s again. Mandurah had even more wild swings than that when it comes to values. I think the one thing that the price point you struggle with on the development blocks is the fact that you still couldn't build something and have it, the price value be reflected in Mandurah, could you? And that's constraining supply, I would have thought.
Definitely, yes. There's been a lot of supply down here for a long time, and that has obviously changed now. The stock levels are low. But yeah, if you were to build a property now, so to buy a block of land, build a property now, would you get your money back? Yes, you would. Yeah, definitely you would. And there's a market for that new product, and there's a scarcity now for that of new product available. So people are now happy to buy a 30, 40-year-old home again and renovate it or live in it. So there's been a change in the mindset of the market.
If we were to think about all the suburbs around the Greater Mandurah area, from Dawesville all the way up to your Silver Sands and these sort of places, and they were all your children, how would you characterise them? If you can go one by one, give them all a couple of key words.
I'm going to say all your professional families and so forth in the Northern Corridor, jump into Port Mandurah and all the canal waterways, they're your business people and high performance mining people. Jumping into the Southern Corridor, I think you've got a really good mixture of that blend in the northern and waterways of Mandurah, but you've also got people who are a little bit more earthy, okay, more salt of the earth in those suburbs.
So are you talking about specifically a Falcon, a Wannanup?
Definitely. Falcon, Wannanup, yeah, Dawesville, yeah, those areas, Bouvard.
So it's still more of a fishing shack vibe down there still, where you could have a weekend away and feel like you're out of Perth?
Absolutely, yeah. We definitely have that vibe. And that is, again, that southern corridor is growing, and there's a lot of infrastructure going in there with shopping centres, schools, etc.
You're a bit vague here. I want a bit more detail. How about your Silver Sands? How about your Lakelands, these sort of suburbs? What separates them from a Halls Head or a Dudley Park?
I think if they're commuting, so if people are commuting to Perth or even commuting up to the airport a lot, that separates those suburbs from Halls Head.
So you're saying they're more north-facing suburbs?
They're the Northern Corridor, north-facing.
They've got a life that's probably a little bit more connected to Perth, is that what you're saying?
I would think so, yeah, absolutely. So I would think a little bit more connected to Perth, a little bit more travel required to Perth. Jump into Old Halls Head, that's a different demographic again. That is a real mixture, but and a sought-after area.
The rental space here, how does that compare to the buying and selling, and also the general message in how the rental space is in Greater Perth?
We don't have enough supply, so there's definitely anyone who's looking to buy in the rental space at the moment. It's a perfect time to do it, the perfect storm. You're definitely positive gearing on, I'm going to say, 95% of your properties that you will purchase. That's a good thing, and I do feel rents will continue to go up next year. We haven't even seen migration properly kick in yet, and the amount of jobs in the mining space, even the amount of jobs down this way, there's just a lot of room for growth.
You were talking to me about nurses.
We did hear a little whisper that there was around 500 nurses that arrived into WA over the last 6 weeks, and obviously there are not enough homes for them to move into. We got somewhere around 27 applications of new nurses that were working in Perth that were happy to make an application for a rental property down here.
And how many did you have available for them?
3. So that low. Yeah, that low.
Let's talk about development for a second. Do you see a lot of private development happening, or are we still at a stage where probably the numbers aren't adding up yet?
There actually seems to be a bit of money being spent down here from the larger developers. So on Mandurah Terrace, in Mandurah Keys, in Erskine, Dawesville, etc. So there seems to be money. People are gearing up to build again. So it sounds like the building market has leveled out a little bit. Prices are not so much come back, but they've leveled out. People are seeing the market being strong down this way for a little time longer.
South of the Peel Inlet, I would characterise it still as having a lot of holiday destination. A lot of people I know go down here for Christmas, spend a week down in Halls Head or Wannanup, something like that, in Falcon. A high percentage still of houses that I understand are rented out via Airbnb. Has that been a bit of a scourge on the rental market in this area?
Look, I think so. I think certainly you noticed the last 3 or 4 years, there's been more and more demand for that Airbnb. We also have seen a little bit of a shift where people are wanting to get their property now managed for long term. So we've actually attracted quite a lot of long-term tenancies again back in, and they've moved away from Airbnb. And I think that's to do with the weekly rents have gone up. A bit more consistency. They don't have to come down and arrange the cleaning, painting of walls all the time, etc. So we have seen a change definitely in that space.
Halls Head and Port Bouvard can get pretty bloody expensive. A lot of people wouldn't realise that. I wish 20 years ago that the local area would have allowed for a lot more height. Give us a bit of Gold Coast about it, because it would really help these days with regards to supply of rentals and holiday homes, especially holiday apartments. It is what it is, right? You have these beautiful canal facing mansions, and I would recommend everyone to come down here and check it out. It is fantastic. Some of those properties get into the $2-3 million mark, the really lovely ones. They're getting back there again. Are you seeing those types of properties that, let's be frank, 3-4 years ago were selling way below replacement cost because these are huge houses? Are you seeing them going a lot quicker now? Are your guys excited when they see a property like that rather than sweating on it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we've over the last 12, 18 months, you've seen a massive change in the waterfront market. So they're selling a lot quicker. Prices are increasing. Like I would say the waterfront market has increased anywhere from 20 to 30%. Whereas the rest of the market's probably moved 15 to 20%. So there's definitely been more growth in that space, and so there should have been as well. You have to remember we were fortunate enough to be involved with the very last of the canal developments in Mariners Cove at Dudley Park. So we sold the very, very last house and land package off Cedar Woods, I'm going to say 6 months ago. So there's no more canal land being developed in the Peel region at all. So there's it's supply and demand, isn't it?
There still seems to be quite a lot of canal front blocks that are vacant land there, owned obviously for years. Is it an affordability factor? Is it they're just investing? I mean, land is an expensive asset to hold as an investment when land tax and rates come into it. East Wannanup, for example, the canals there's still quite a lot of vacant land in those canals.
Oh, there definitely is. And you find a lot of people bought with the vision to build and retire down this way. There was a lot of that for a long time. And then there's people that have bought in the peak and they've paid big dollars for their blocks, and they've obviously still maybe 20% below what the peak of the market showed or was achieving. I think there's a lot of factors behind that. What I am noticing at the moment is in our estate in Mariners Cove, so come back to the northern side of Mandurah or central Mandurah, on the waterfront, is there is a lot of builds going on. When a block comes on the market, bang, it's sold, and you're noticing right now dirt's getting turned within 6 months. It's changing again, but I do believe there's a lot of people who are looking to retire down here that are still retaining those blocks, and they've had them for a long time.
They've 15, 20 years. Fun question. In Perth, there's very much a divide culturally, north versus south. Does the same thing happen in Mandurah?
I think so. I think there's always been that north and south. Where are you from? And the northern corridor, southern corridor? Yeah.
Do you ask the question? Are you north of the inlet or south of the inlet? Is that the sort of...
Yeah, you definitely do. Yeah. So and it's separated by your Medora Bay, Silver Sands, Halls Head, Dawesville, Wannup and Dawesville. So you definitely ask the question, and you're in the northern corridor, southern corridor.
Where do you live, Ben?
Yeah, I'm smack in the middle. So I'm in an estate called Mariners Cove in Dudley Park. Really close proximity to the town, on the waterways, obviously. And
it's a beautiful place. I just wish they picked a more attractive name than Dudley Park. All I think about is Harry Potter, right? And I mean, Dudley is not the most attractive name in the first place. There are so many better names that could have been picked for the place. Have you not thought about it?
Not at all.
Look, I advise everyone to go in there because there are beautiful, and very functional homes in there. But I just look at it and go, geez, you could have picked a better name.
Dudley. I didn't think of it like that. And there's certainly some quirky names in suburbs down here. But yeah, I'll try not to think of it the way you do, Trent.
Last question. Median house price in Mandurah, what is it?
Median house price has just cracked for over $480,000. So as we speak, I know $100,000 below the median house price of WA, and what's that, $140,000 below that of Perth. Mm-hmm. So yeah, great value to get in here, high rents, great place to be, and I would love to think there's going to be good days ahead.
With that money, you had that cash in your hand today, and you had to buy property cash today. Specifically, where would that be and what would it be?
Specifically right at the moment, I don't think you'll go wrong anywhere. If you want high growth, I still think you need to look at full blocks of land with houses on them. So, and with the potential to subdivide or the potential to put a second dwelling on, I think there's always going to be good growth in that space.
Where could you afford it for $480,000?
I think most suburbs. So Dudley Park, I'm going to bring that name up again. There's Dudley Park, there's Coodanups, there's Greenfields, there's the old pockets of San Remo. There's so many pockets. There's Dawesville. You'll find pockets in Wannanup, and that's in the newer areas. I don't think you're going to go wrong right at this very point of where you invest your money here.
So you suggesting that this area grows homogeneously. Generally, there aren't suburbs you're expecting that will do better than others.
Right at this point, I would be very hard to name, but I think all the suburbs at this point in time are going to see, good returns.
Final question. Your favourite suburb, your favourite street in that suburb. Tell us where to look up on Google Maps right now and get on Street View and check out that street?
Just based on the view and the locality and the history, I'm going to go Fairbridge Road in Old Halls Head. Good luck buying in there. But I do have quite a few favourite streets down this way, and but I just love that one because it reminds me of the waterways and my lifestyle growing up as a kid.
So a bit of nostalgia. Ben Hatch, director of Harcourts Mandurah, probably the most successful agency in Western Australia at the moment, along with probably Sean Hughes, Real Mark Coastal. You're neck and neck up there, and absolutely killing the pig, mate. Congratulations on having such a fantastic agency, such a coverage over Mandurah. My understanding is about a third of everything in Mandurah gets sold in this agency. That's a pretty mean feat, mate. Thanks for sharing with us your Mandurah life, and I hope everyone listening has a good look down here, because it's been my perspective for a good 12 months now that this place is on the way up.
I really appreciate it, Trent. Thanks for the invite. Love being on the show. I would love to give a shout out to my fellow directors as well in here. So there's Lee Perry, Claire Seamer, Paul Blakely, and the entire team of Harcourts Mandurah. It's been a great journey and a great success, and we look forward to continue it. Success in Mandurah for sure. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!